James Blake's vocals are nothing short of absorbing and moody. Blake's staticky and rumbly keyboard makes you feel warm, almost as if the notes are powering a small flame. But like most tracks by James Blake, the 30-year-old manages to combine honeyed vocals with a minimal trap beat or related EDM sound. The sound of his voice manages to shed an emotional and creative armor in order to deliver a message of love and pain, and sometimes a mixture of both. James Blake Litherland was born on September 26, 1988 in London, England. Sometimes using nothing but his voice and a keyboard, Blake has managed to pioneer a new sound that has traveled around hundreds of venues across the world. His early sound can mainly be seen as an ode to heartbreak, loneliness, and emotional omission. The early formula that James Blake started to trademark didn't take long to catch on. But before we learn more about that, who is James Blake, and what made him the person he is today? James Blake is the son of James Litherland, who was a founding member of the rock band Colosseum. So from an early age, Blake was already being surrounded by music production and performance. Growing up, he received classical training on the piano and eventually went on to receive a degree in popular music at Goldsmiths, University of London. Using his music background and then expanding on it while in college, it didn't take long for James Blake to try and release some music of his own. Starting in July of 2009, Blake released his debut record, Air and Lack Thereof. It got the attention of many DJs at BBC and eventually went on to land a lot of airtime. After recording a cover of the song Limit to Your Love, highly recognized DJ Zane Lowe went on to give the cover a lot of recognition and deemed it as his hottest record in the world. James Blake is not much of a pop star, as he is pop dark matter, as Brian Howe of the AV Club puts him. His sound has drawn the attention of artists ranging from Beyonce to Kendrick Lamar to Bon Iver. And rightfully so after such a successful run, especially after his debut project. Only 2 years later, Blake released his self-titled sophomore album. The same year, Blake was nominated for BBC's Sound of 2011 title. There, he joined the likes of groups like The Vaccines and Jamie Woon in terms of traction. Hit after hit, and James Blake seemed to fly under the radar for the larger part of his early career. Those who really explored production credits and caught wind of his sound really wanted to know who he was. There has always been something haunting and familiar about his music, and part of it more than likely has to do with the set of experiences that shaped his music.
Red coat, found her. Found her. Red coat, found her. Found her.
For a while, Blake described himself as very lonely and an isolated individual. He attributed a lot of his lyrics to heartbreak and retreat. In an interview with Pitchfork, Blake elaborated on those feelings. This question was asked a couple years after James Blake's fame had already been established, but I think it's a really good self-reflection in terms of what the quote is trying to get at. The question was asked, "You have a reputation for making melancholy music. Were you trying to get away from that at this time?" To that, James replies, "I listened to my old music and I really didn't sound like a happy person. It was surprising to find out that I had been fairly unhappy that whole time, and people close to me may have not noticed. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy anything, but those first 4 years of my career, I'm not sure I remember as much of it as I would like to, in vivid technicolor. Some of it is grayed out. I realized that. It wasn't important whether I was happy or sad. It was about sensitivity and your reaction to the world. I wouldn't want to be one of those artists that keeps themselves in a perpetual cycle of anxiety and depression just to extract music from that." But using his usual standard of bending physics to his will, Blake was able to translate these feelings into many contemporary pop records, mainly R&B with fine traceries of dubstep and trap. After releasing his self-titled project, Blake started to spend a lot of time with Kanye West, who he has publicly recognized as his favorite artist, and Bon Iver in 2012. With that networking, Blake started to build up a continuation to his last album. Before releasing his next album, which he titled Overgrown, he released several projects under the collective moniker 1-800-Dinosaur. On April 5th, 2013, Overgrown was finally released. The release received critical acclaim and was awarded the 2013 Mercury Prize. Blake revealed to Hot Press magazine that Falling in Love had influenced the warm, new soul sound of the album. as opposed to the experimentalism found on his self-titled effort. As Blake continued to climb the charts, his name started to become more of a household name when it came to production. His rise to fame also taught him how to express himself better throughout the years. Initially, he was seen as a very shy and reserved artist. In an interview with GQ magazine, he gives a clear idea of how human he really is, especially when he started out. The context of this quote is that someone mentioned how calculated his answers used to be and how shy he used to be. And to that, Blake replied, "I think a lot of it comes from the fact that when I was first starting out, I was a little bit nervous. I was a little bit defensive talking to people about my music. I do everything. This is all me. This is my thing. Nobody else is involved in his music. This is all me. I was worried that anybody could fuck me over, or that people would take my words and misconstrue them. I just wasn't prepared. I was 21, and suddenly I'm being interviewed, and people think I have a lot more to say than I do. Or they want to know me, and I don't really want to know them. I think interviewers started to be a little wary of me, and I was just going to be defensive, and then I didn't like that." But the James Blake we see today is definitely not the James Blake that we saw early in his career.
Well, like, what's something that we wouldn't expect Kanye to listen to? Like, what do you? What
Well,
are
I
you
think
into
people
music-wise?
expect me to listen to anything, but I listen to James Blake the most. That's
Okay.
like my favorite artist.
Who's James Blake? Help me out.
That's Justin Bieber's dad.
Oh, what? It's not. Yeah, who's
Yeah, it's like kind of the exact opposite of that. It's like it's just he's James Blake. Just go listen to his music and say, "Hey, that's Kanye's favorite artist is James Blake."
James Blake. All
James
right.
Blake just
Heard it
made a
first.
bunch of money, like just now.
The demand for Blake's brilliance started to grow, and Blake managed to process the fame really well. Though there are some aspects of James Blake's character that aren't really easily absorbed, a combination of brave experimentation, calculated collaborations, and raw talent have continued to make James Blake one of the most integrated musicians in the industry today. In an interview with Spotify, Blake admitted that he turned down Drake's team from a very generous offer to sample one of his beats. Spending more time with Kanye and Justin Vernon, Blake learned the ins and outs of the music industry better, especially when it came to working with hip-hop artists.
Save yourself first. Part-time love is a life from there. We're never done.
Opportunities continued to roll in for Blake, to the point where he was featured on 2 songs with Beyonce, the songs Forward and Pray You Catch Me, a move that Blake recalls as completely unpredicted and humbling. To add to his already padded resume, James Blake would later go on to work on Jay-Z's 444 album, and then help rewrite Kendrick Lamar's Element. 2016 was in Blake's hands, and his fast-paced work ethic finally led to his 3rd studio album, The Color and Everything. So the question remains, what is the influence that James Blake has had as of late? For anyone that kept up with James Blake in the 2 years between In Color and Everything and his 2019 release Assume Form, the hiatus proved to be nothing but productive. On January 11, 2018, James Blake co-wrote and performed alongside J-Rock, Kendrick Lamar, and Future on the single King's Dead from the albums Redemption and Black Panther, the album. The song was commercially successful, reaching 21 in the United States and 50 in the United Kingdom. On January 26, 2018, Blake released a new single, If the Car Beside You Moves Ahead, alongside its music video having premiered on his BBC Radio 1 residency. Blake's 2nd solo single of that year, Don't Miss It, was shared on May 24th alongside a lyric video and was released the next month. Despite receiving acclaim from music critics, a less positive review by Kevin Lozano of Pitchfork, which described a lot of James's music early that year as sad boy music, prompted a response from James Blake, who said, "I can't help but notice, as I do whenever I talk about my feelings in a song, that the word sad boy is used to describe it. I've always found that expression to be unhealthy and problematic when used to describe men who openly talk about their feelings." But his success continued, and eventually James Blake landed a spot on the song Stop Trying to Be God by Travis Scott in his 3rd studio album, Astroworld. Hit after hit after hit, and more demand, James Blake really made 2018 as successful as he made his 2016. And now, the Assume Form era of James Blake, which was his latest album, is a refreshing image for what stage of life James Blake is in. He's happier, established, and has kept the same charm in his music that he is known for. He is an artist worth keeping up with for the next couple of years, because with every release, James Blake seems to only be scratching the surface of his talent.